Hello and welcome to today's action-oriented webinar discussion on professional sponsorship. My name is Claire Platt and I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at All In Together. Today, we are so excited to be joined by Caroline Wanga, who is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer and Vice President of Human Resources at Target Corporation, as well as Kim Strong, who is the former Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at Target Corporation, as well as the founder and CEO of Strong Connection. Caroline and Kim are going to spend some time sharing their story of successful professional sponsorship and talk about how they are prioritizing advocacy and impact in their professional roles and beyond. At the end of their discussion, we'll reserve some time for audience questions, so please type your questions into the Q&A box or comment on Facebook, and we will gather questions at the end of the conversation. You can also join the conversation by following along with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. All right, without further ado, Caroline and Kim, I will now turn it over to you to give our audience some background on your individual stories, how you became connected in a sponsor-sponsee relationship, and how you're prioritizing impact in your workplace and beyond. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. This is Kimberly Strong. I'll say again, I just want to honor to be a part of this call, as well as I'm on the a board advisor for All In Together as well. So it's just really honored to be here. And I'm physically with Caroline, so it's always great to catch up and see her as well. One of the things is about my background. I was with Target over 28 years and always definitely was an advocate for women, but something about Caroline, when I met her, I think it was 10 years ago, and I actually was, I saw her and I just saw something in her and knew that down the road, I was going to plan for her to be my backfill when I decided to move on. And I was real intentional with it. And I think that's a key word of people who advocate or sponsor women in whatever avenue, that you have to definitely be intentional with it. It just doesn't happen on its own. And one of the things is I really put in a plan in place of how I saw Caroline and different experiences that she needed to have in order to lead an organization like Target in their inclusion and diversity efforts. So I was just really made sure. And one of the key things is I told her. I think sometimes people just do it behind the scenes, but when you tell someone, I think it does make a difference, because then you really can work together on the plan. So I think that was part of the secret sauce in making it work. So one of my things I like to make sure with people, like if you're sponsoring someone in whatever avenue, make sure you let them know. And that's what I did in my professional career, as well as in my own business now, sponsoring startup entrepreneurs, female startup entrepreneurs, and really being an advocate for them and getting them out there and exposure. So, but that's one of I would say, the key things. And I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be with you here today. More important, to be with somebody that I have grown to love and admire. I'll pick up where Kim left off, which is this. I remember the day, and Kim has heard this story before, that Kim told me she was my sponsor. We were at a D&I event that she had played a role in inviting me to, a supplier diversity event. And I remember she walked up to me and she was like, "Caroline, I'm your sponsor." And like, if I would have had a thought bubble, it'd have been like, huh? Like, what does that mean? I don't understand. And it wasn't a negative feeling. It was just, I didn't know. Nobody had ever declared sponsorship with me. I wasn't in a place in my career where I like automatically understood what that was. And the reason why I share that story is because I would say that part of Kim has a gift on connecting people anyway. So like, she does it better than most. But even in the role of sponsor, I think what I appreciated the most about Kim is, whether or not I understood why she was signing up to be my sponsor, she did the work to act as a sponsor. So that even if I couldn't quite put my hands around it, she talked about being intentional, but like behaviorally, and Kim still does it to this day. She'll be like, "You need to be here. You need to be here. You need to talk to this person. Here's why. Here's where you need to be." And so a sponsor really takes ownership of navigating the person they're sponsoring to wherever it is either the person wants to go or they're trying to get them to. And often those who are sponsored may not have experienced it before. And so if you're going to play that sponsor role, intentionality is what Kim said, 100%. And it's intentionality around either your joint mission or as a sponsor, because of one of the things that defines a good sponsor is you have access, privilege, level, insight that allows you to see things that maybe the person you're sponsoring can't see, and strategically help the person you're sponsoring get into places they need to be based on what you have visibility to that might be different from what they have visibility to.
Yeah, and sometimes with that comes trust. It has to have a lot of trust, because there are certain things that sometimes I couldn't give Caroline all the information just based on sometimes level and area, that she just had to trust that, hey, I got your back, and just, you know, talk to this person or maybe decide to think about this particular idea. So a lot of trust has to be in that relationship.
And it's not just about aspiration, right? Like Kim, long before I'd identified myself, she had identified myself as her backfill. And then there came a point where I actually articulated that being of interest, and she was helpful as I discussed that as well and then made it happen. But it's also about the watch outs, right? So yes, there is one of the differences between sponsors and mentors is sponsors are really about, they can be a mentor too in terms of the role, but the sponsorship behavior is about helping you get to whatever your destination is through the access, privilege, exposure level they have. Like that is the primary difference between the two, is a sponsor has the ability to create that path. And so that is a big part of it. But the other thing that I think was a part of just Kim and I's continued relationship that still continues now is watch outs. So if she's sitting in a talent conversation, hypothetically, and there's somebody who had a perspective on me that I needed to make sure that I resolved, because I may not know that that was the impact, or it may have been misinterpreted, or I've talked to her about that event and the other person involved isn't talking about it the same way, there's a role of watch out that a sponsor plays. It's not about speaking for you, but it is about being, hey, Caroline, remember you said it was really important to you that so-and-so thought greatly of you. I was in a talent conversation. Here are the things that I think that person needs to hear. Or here's a place where what you said might have been misinterpreted. You need to circle back and go here. Or here's a place where I resolved it. I'm just letting you know that I resolved it. And so it isn't just about what are your aspirations and career advancement. It's also about the right amount of kind of protective insight so that the things that may not be going well don't get in the way of the things that should be going well.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing kind of your individual stories and how you got introduced to this wonderful sponsorship, sponsee relationship. I would love to hear more about how your relationship with one another kind of opened doors for each of you to create broader impact in your workplace, and how sponsorship can be a tool to really empowering individuals to bring impact into their place of work.
I'll be happy to start, and then Kim, you can pick up from there. So this is extremely like tangible and real. Mm-hmm. So Kim's perspective on me and plan for me is something that over time she gave me clarity into, but it was strategic about when she gave me clarity into those things, right? Because she had decided that from a sponsorship perspective, she saw the future in me that I may not have even seen in myself at the moment, right? And as she mentioned, there's trust. But one of the things that happened as a part of that is at the point that Kim had kind of said, I think that Caroline could be my backfill. I think that Caroline could play the role that I'm in. A couple of different things happened. Kim on her own, without like my particular personal involvement, looked at the operating model of the D&I function and looked at an opportunity for me to have the ability to learn under her, by helping to create a role that gave me the safety of learning this job underneath her while she's still in it, versus a lot of times people don't always get to have the incumbent of a role be there while they're learning that role. And for me, if you want to connect that to sponsorship behavior, again, Kim at her level within the HR organization and within Target had the power to create a role. She took the right partners, but like I couldn't create a role. But Kim could. And what I will tell you in hindsight is that the ability to spend a year and a half, almost 2 years under Kim learning this job, and then Kim owning, being really intentional and focused on introducing me to the D&I industry, connecting me to people who even to this day will come up to me and say, Kim told me to take care of you and watch you. right? Which is a love statement, by the way. So making sure that at the point that I would transition into the role, that I had an opportunity to sit underneath her in a little bit of a safer space to learn the work, connect to the industry, and be ready is a really prominent example of what like it looks like for sponsors to act their role, do what they need to do for individuals who may not understand it. And to this day, I appreciate the ability of being able to learn under her, because that's not something very many people get to do, period. But she made that decision as a sponsor to do that and to articulate that she felt like I was her backfill, which then helps everybody else understand that that's the thought and get in line to support that. And I remember when my boss at the time in HR, when I was a generalist in HR, came to me, I was supposed to go and be a generalist in our California market. That was the intentional plan. I wanted to do mergers and acquisitions. And so my boss had gone to a talent planning conversation, and I was expecting to hear back on what the plans would be for California. And so my boss called me that night, and she's like, hey, we talked about California. Here's the plan. Here's when you're going to get there. And then she was like, but I got one more thing for you. There's a diversity and inclusion director job open, and the HR generalist leadership team unanimously supports you to do that. Kim was not in that meeting. That was the HR generalist leadership team. But what I do know is me ending up being the discussion in that room for this job was about the work and the groundwork that Kim had put forth before that. So that the people that actually owned the decision were just as aligned as Kim was to the fact that I was the right person for the job. That doesn't happen accidentally, right? That is years and effort of framing up what is the right thing for Target, what's the right thing for me, what's the right thing for Kim, what's the right thing for work, and then strategically putting it into action based on what she knew about the HR ecosystem and structure that would help get me there in the right way, that would set me up for success.
And also that takes, this is Kim talking, it is a lot of planning, because you got to keep, vigilant and just really keep putting the name out there, because people start thinking about their own territory, especially in larger organizations. Everybody wants the best talent in their world. And so it's just really keeping the person and their ambition in mind to say, no, yeah, they could do anything, but this is what I know they want, and this is how I've planned for them to take over that particular role. And I think everybody in the end, always great to have a boss. My boss was on my side, and it was a lot of little cocktail evenings in the evening to really, because you're just pushing that discussion along in any way you can. Once you find that talent and you know who you want to have in that role, and then it becomes so clear that, like Caroline said, it's so obvious that everybody they thought they came up with the idea themselves.
Yeah.
Everybody started claiming Caroline. I was like, I know the real deal, but no, that's the fun part of the plan. But it is hard when you got to start with great talent. I think in any of the organizations, that out there, who the great talent is, and just fight for them. And sometimes if they're not going to be right there, you might have to strategically get them out of another area to get into your area, but just really fight for them. And when you're at the table, and now I say you have a seat at the table, you got to use that platform and use your influence to make sure people are hearing what you're saying about that person.
Yeah, I think the piece I would add to what Kim said as she was talking is, especially when you're in an organization and they're discussed as high potential talent, as Kim discussed, it actually may be an unintended consequence that people don't want to give them away, right? Because like HR probably would have loved to have kept Caroline and kept her in the generalist line. And Kim, how long did you work at Target total?
28.
28 years. I've been at 14. Kim and I officially met, I think within 5 years of when she left. So we had existed in Target that whole time and we'd said hello and seen each other at events, but hadn't really had a relationship. And so part of it is you never know where your sponsor is going to come from. Just be open to where it may come from. But I think the important piece for Kim and I after we got together is, I would say, you might add more context, it probably was 2.5 years of work. On Kim's end before the discussion about me going into the role even came onto my radar. And so I wouldn't have been able to tell you that proactively. I'm telling you that in hindsight. But even with Kim and I both having worked at Target for as many decades as we have, plus the fact that we now met each other, even after meeting each other, it was a good amount of time that Kim was doing her work behind the scenes and then not making me feel like I didn't feel guilty because I didn't understand a sponsor. I just chose to trust that when she tells me she's her sponsor, she knows what that's going to be, and I just need to listen. That then led us to here. So I would just use that to set the tone for the timing to destination, whatever the goal may be, is not going to be instant gratification. But Kim's word trust, I think, is what's most important, which is when she told me I was her sponsor, I didn't understand what that meant because I'd never had one, but I knew I trusted her, and I just sat under her teaching and allowed her to just get from me whatever information she needed from me and give it to her with trust and talk her through what I'm doing, not knowing what she's going to do with it, is what got us here. If I would have over prioritized intellectually trying to understand what a sponsor is and needed a like roles and responsibilities document and all of that stuff, it would have made it entirely too formal to work. This is about a relationship with somebody who has chosen to support you. Your role as somebody being sponsored is to share what you're experiencing. Their job is to help you put it together to determine how you define a goal and destination.
Awesome. And Caroline and Kim, I would love to hear more about how you continue to create impact either at Target for you, Caroline, or Kim, now that you've moved on, how you're prioritizing impact within your professional role beyond your relationship with one another, and how you carry that forward, Caroline, after having received such a successful sponsor, and how you're trying to carry that forward with young women like yourself.
Here's what I would tell you. It's not past tense. Like, the only thing that's different now is our paychecks aren't written by the same company. Like, that's literally the difference, right? Because as Kim has moved into other parts of her career with strong connection and like kind of investing in companies, helping people find role, like all of this work that is now Kim's company is still a place where she's doing work, operating in the way that she wants to. I know for a fact that like Kim's connection to me did not change after she left Target. And so the behavior that she demonstrated in keeping her eyes open, giving me advice on stuff, helping me see around the corners on things I didn't see, checking in on me to make sure that I'm okay, offering her help where I need it, still plays out to this day. I guess ELC is one of the things I'll use as an example, which is the Executive Leadership Council, that is an organization that is trying to advance the number of African Americans in corporate C-suites on a corporate boards of directors. I know ELC. I've been a part of their programming for a really long time. There was a point in time within Target that I was eligible to come be a part of ELC. So as that became a thing that was new, Kim has been involved with ELC for a really long time. So as I was trying to figure out how I want to navigate that, she still was a person who said, okay, Caroline, like, understand what you're signing up for when you become a part of ELC. Know, like, how you want to make impact. And so she still played a role in advising me through a goal in the same way she has going forward. She still plays a role in helping keep me focused on perspective, understand what's happening around the corners to help me be successful. She brings me into places and spaces where I need to be. I bring her into places and spaces where I think she could be helpful. And so there is nothing about the interaction that changed because our paychecks are written by two different places. It's still the same. And I think the message in that is, if it's real, it doesn't need a common workplace to exist. And one of the biggest things I've learned from Kim is my personal and professional kind of development group and network is mostly people that don't work at Target. And I think that's something that I've learned from Kim and benefited from Kim because she's a master connector of people. I'm an introvert who would rather go to bed than go to a happy hour. And so what Kim has been for me is a person who helps me prioritize what connections I need to have, because my natural energy wants to throw up at the idea of going to meet a whole bunch of strangers. So Kim helps me go like, okay, here's the 3 people, or this person's going to be at this event. Here's why you need to talk to them. Or, hey, I heard about this. You should think about this. And it helps me manage my energy as an introvert, but still make the connection. And if Kim didn't know that about me, then I might be in a place where I'm just exhausting myself trying to meet 1,000 people versus meeting the people that are important for me to meet for many reasons. Would you add anything?
No, I think that, like you said, the relationship has not changed. And I think on my end, what it helps is, you know, people have heard like it's really a reverse mentorship now because of, you know, Caroline understanding really the new cutting edge things that are coming out, especially in corporate America. I can't keep all on top of all of that. So she definitely has been helpful with, you know, making sure I understand what's new. And then again, now with me helping female startup businesses, you know, I'm trying to, you know, introduce them to powerful women in the business area as well. So she's been really helpful with that. And so that's how I continue to leverage my sponsorship outside of Target. And still, like I said, with Target, like I said, nothing's changed. I'm always going to be a friend of Target.
And Kim's my person, right? So this is a great example about like this particular event and the other All In Together event. I have a criteria I use for where I show up to speak. We all do in these jobs. I did this because Kim said. And it wasn't Kim said from a forceful perspective. It was like, this is my pay it forward. This is my thank you. That if I only agnostic of not having any other relationship with All In Together on the prioritization list, this may or may not have made the list. Kim, who helped me get to where I am, asks me to do this, and it's a yes no matter what. It's a make it work, right? Because I recognize in hindsight how much of her own capital she expensed on me by choice. And any moment or opportunity that I have, whether it be giving insight or whatever, to pay that back gives me joy because she didn't have to. There's a ton of people at Target that she could have put under her wing. And by the way, Kim has 1,000 people under her cape. Like, don't mistake that, right? I'm one of many, and I'm just fine with that. I guess I can share her with other people. But like in hindsight, like I wish I would have known more about how to leverage Kim because I miss her even more now within Target. She's still connected, but like the capital that Kim Strong has put down for Caroline Longa, the little Kenyan girl, don't touch Kim Strong unless you want to deal with me. Like that's my person. If Kim asks, I'm there. If Kim needs, I'm there. If Kim wants, I'm there. Because that's the piece that I get to do now as gratitude to her.
Awesome. My next question pivots a little bit towards just general advocacy and impact, because you know at All In Together we talk a lot about how critical it is that women are leading in the professional, the personal, and the political spheres. So how has your impact inside of Target and inside the workplace carried over into your personal or political impact more broadly? And how do those things intersect and overlap for each of you?
I think with me, one of the things with Target, just fully understanding my background, Target is the only place I ever worked. So right out of college, they recruited me from Howard University, and I moved to Minneapolis. But at the time, Target had different operating divisions. So it didn't feel, I had a question someone asked me today, like, wow, 28 years is a long time to work for a company. And my son will tell me already now, Mom, there's no way I'm working 28 years with the same company. But what was different was they had different divisions. So I moved 9 times with Target. So I've been East Coast, West Coast. So that's part of how I connect with a lot of people because of the different areas I've lived. So Target already gave me that leverage of really opening up just professionally, but volunteerism was such a huge thing with Target. They had a program where they put me on boards. And so I did board service for, you know, communities within where I live since I moved around a lot. That was the way I got connected into different organizations. So that's where it did really help open that door. And now I currently live in Georgia, and there's a lot going on in Georgia right now. And I'm definitely playing my role there in terms of making sure, advocating, making sure everybody's registered to vote and different things. So it has come full circle in terms of how I'm, you know, helping. And then again, I always go to helping these definitely very young startup companies and really giving them the leverage because they've never worked in a formal environment in terms of being in a large corporation, or at least not for a long time. And so I can help them with that. So it's definitely has the whole culture of Target has definitely been in my life.
Yeah, the only piece that I would add is I think with the advent of technology continuing to push how people are connected, The idea of engagement in a workplace versus out of a workplace, it's a blurry line, right? Like there isn't as clear a distinction about the space within which you exist as there might have been in past times when technology didn't start to create a merge on those things. And I would just say again, I think that the brand of Target is something that I am proud to be affiliated with, and Kim is a wonderful ambassador of, but it is just the place where we met. It is not the place where we operate. We operate in relationship between two Black women who are committed to supporting one another to their goals. Like that is the most important thing here. And then yes, from a corporate perspective, you can put a sponsorship label on it. Yes, from an external perspective, you could put a label on it. But at the end of the day, this is a mutually respected and loved relationship of two Black women equally committed to helping us each reach their goals, and our goals change. What Kim is doing today is not what she was doing when I met her. Nothing has changed about my support of her. Same on my end. And so the place just becomes a medium for communication. It doesn't become the boundary for what the relationship is. So yeah, Target's fine, but if tomorrow I went and did something else, Kim Strong's still a part of it, agnostic of who cuts my check.
And what advice would you give to women who are maybe junior staff without obvious access to a sponsor or to high level decision makers, and how they go about, having a connection to meaning in their work and making an impact in their workplace, but also getting that sort of access?
So like, here's what I'd say, and Kim can kind of mention it from like how she looks at talent and picks people. Just do your job well. Like, I think the biggest thing to talk about in sponsorship, which makes it different from mentorship, a person can play both roles, but the role is different, is that sponsors are always looking for you. You heard me talk about like sponsors are at a level, they're at a exposure, they have a certain power and privilege tied to title or other things. Like, your role is to do your job or do whatever you're doing really, really well. You do that, and the people who want to be a part of your journey and help you get to your destination will find you. If you feel like you want a sponsorship and don't have a sponsorship and you want that, I would start by asking yourself, what are you doing in your role? Are you doing it the best that you can? What are you doing with the mentors that you have? What is your message discipline about who you are so people have clarity about what you're focused on? What are the things you're doing to demonstrate that you are open to more than just what you're doing right now? How do you use the informal moments where you get to connect with people at higher levels to make intentional connections versus just becoming like a serial get to know you person that just talks to everybody the same way? There's strategy from wanting to be a person who is picked up by a sponsor that is connected to doing your job really well. First thing, the goal at the end of the day is to stay employed and be really good at what you do. That in and of itself is a magnet for anybody that wants to be a sponsor, because everybody wants to be a part of somebody's victory and they sincerely want to help. You will not get a sponsor to look at you if you ain't doing your job well, because the sponsor's role is to take that to another level. So if the foundation isn't strong, that's probably a place you need to focus. Second, where you get exposure to the people that might sit in your sponsorship kind of like desires, are you planful about how you use those moments? Who's going? What do I know about them? Looking up on LinkedIn. What do I know about what they're thinking about? What is the business strategy they're on? So you can actually strategically navigate how you go interact with people that you want to have exposure to versus just going up to them, shaking their hand and waiting for them to say anything, right? What are you doing to show interest in what they're doing? And then the third piece for me, be clear about where you want to go so that when a sponsor comes to engage with you, you have a clear message on what you are going after from a goal perspective that helps them understand how to help you. Kim, would you add anything?
No, I think you've hit on it. And I think really for me, a lot of times it's just, if there's some type of cross task force, cross functional piece is a good way for people to get more exposure and people meeting you. But bottom line is you have to be capable and be able to do the work, because otherwise, I know personally, I would not use my influence and my power on someone who I know can't do the job. So that's the bottom line.
You always have mentors who you use to talk through the ugly, the dirty, the whatever, right? This is different. Sponsors are there to help with their leverage, get you there. And so you got to be there already in terms of your potential for them to then decide that they're going to take a bet on you.
And as to prominent D&I professionals, how would you both say that you go about prioritizing doing good while also doing well, in your professional role and beyond?
I'm trying to think. How do I prioritize? You're right. I mean, there's just always definitely that time is just of the essence because we just never have enough of it, and people always are trying to get with it. I think really just is try to have good partners, people who can help you plan. I can't think of like a real scientific mode of saying how I would differentiate that. It just takes time, and you're going to make mistakes in trying to plan and do all that. But I don't know if I have a really good answer, Caroline.
Here's what I would offer from what I've seen from Kim, and then I'll tell you mine. Kim has a natural gifting on connecting people. And because it's a natural gifting, like it's not something that maybe at the all of us in our natural gifts, we don't always put them at the forefront of our mind as a thing, right? Because it's just how we operate. Like when you think about doing good and doing well, Kim Strong has done well and had a highly successful career, but she has never not taken somebody with her on that journey. I think it's Kevin Spacey maybe, or somebody that might have had a quote that said, when you get to the top of the building, your role is to send the elevator back down for whoever needs to get there next. Kim's do well and do good combination is the fact that if she does well and doesn't bring anybody else there, she's not being authentically Kim. Kim's operation and the way that she operates is nurturer, take care of people, connect people, make sure people are equipped to do their thing. That's her do good in the world. That's her purpose. Right? And so it sits right next to each other. My version of that is, if you would have met, even when I first met Kim, like the Caroline Walker you see today is not what this is not what you would have gotten, right? Just from an aesthetic perspective, I was wearing New York and Company cardigans and pants, right? Like just sitting there, not in a negative way, just like everybody else. Going into the job related to D&I, having the air cover that Kim gave me to support me authentically, unlocked an opportunity for me to finish off what it meant for me to bring my authenticity to work. And the liberation of being able to then operate as I am authentically, whether it be aesthetically or in my personality, and be successful in the job is the model that Kim built. That doesn't mean that Caroline and Kim are the same. It means that what we do is we're taking our natural gifting, applying it to our work as a part of our do good. We're taking where our authenticity sits, bringing that forward without really having to think about it, and are both committed to not asking people to do anything we would never do. But it shows up different for each of us because her authenticity and connection to people is her thing. Mine is about, I'm gonna wear whatever the hell I want, say whatever the hell I want. And we both value that and have both been successful in unlocking the full extent of our authenticity. And I think that's where do good and do well meet.
Awesome. Thank you both. We're now going to take a couple questions from our audience. So, if you're tuning in live, continue to type in your questions in the question box. But the first one that I have for you, Kim and Caroline, is how is it important and how has it been important for you as women to connect to other women in your workplace, maybe beyond one another? And also if you could share any tips or advice you have for women who are working in male-dominated spaces and how to connect to other women, even if they're not on their immediate teams.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine my life not connecting with other women. I mean, I've made it such a part of my my brand for so long. So it's definitely, and I think the ways you can make it, of course, the work setting is going to, you can reach out and do it there. But for areas that you say are more male dominating, I think, look at the total community with who's in your community. There's a lot of things that I find now when I'm helping people, a lot of people don't like networking. And I know Caroline has mentioned it too, but it's just a lot of people that's a tough one for them. So, I mean, look at it like Eventbrite. There's a lot of, if you put Eventbrite and look in your area, there's a lot of women's groups that get together. There's so many women's conferences or meetups. Just put Meetup Women. There's a lot of meetups in particular communities that you can, network, especially if you have a harder time finding other women. I always say nonprofit boards are a good way to start because that gives you some connection, especially if maybe there's females who are dominating that particular area. But for yourself, I always find it helpful when sometimes, because it can be a lot. Like, so there's a couple of times where I just created my own groups. So what I do lately is if I'm traveling, I try to make my time worthwhile. So I'll look at my LinkedIn connections, my Facebook connections, and see who's in town. So if I'm in San Francisco, I'll see who do I know over there. They might not know each other, but I bring them together, and we'll just have, a happy hour or something, go to dinner, and then they're meeting new people. I do that with my alma mater at Howard. If I go into DC, I look to see who I know there, students, and I'll just bring them all together. And then they kind of start creating their own cohort themselves, because I'll just say, hey, let's get together. Have you talked to this person since the last time I talked? So I try to create some of those circles myself, but there's definitely opportunities. But I know one lately that I've been seeing a lot, in Eventbrite, I just was shocked how many women's organizations have conferences, and there's things out there that people can get connected to.
Yeah, the only piece I would add to what Kim said, one of my favorite quotes is from Madeleine Albright, and she says, there's a special place in hell for women that don't help other women. And I think that that is an ethos that Kim and I both have. The added context I would offer to what she shared is this. Yes, it is important for women to help other women. I 100% believe that. But it doesn't automatically mean that a woman is the best person to help you with what you need. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things I see often in the support of each other is people assume because there's an aesthetic connection to a person. You're a woman, so you would be the best person to mentor or sponsor me. You're a Black woman, so you would be best. Often can end you up in places where you're making an assumption about that person's skills, expertise, personality, that because there's a couple of things that you guys have in common, they're the right person to help you with everything. So the piece that I would add to what Kim said is you got to really know yourself. You got to know what you need. You got to know how you need it. And then you've got to make sure that even though there might be a connection to another person because you are a woman, that they are the right person for what you're trying to work on. And I'll use Kim and I as an example. Kim has a natural gifting around connecting to people. I bet you money Kim could teach a class on how to connect to people, but most of it, she was just born with it. Right? And so if somebody struggles with it and is trying to learn how to be better at it, Kim may or may not be the right person to mentor them because it's always been a part of what she does. So teaching somebody how to go from being bad at it to good at it, she might not be the right person, even though she's good at it, because it sits in natural gifting. People ask me that stuff about public speaking. They're like, Caroline, you're so good at public speaking. Can you play a sponsor role and help me get connected to things that help me do public speaking? And I always tell them I am the absolute wrong person to be the person who plays that role because I don't know how to teach it, because it's just been a part of who I am. And so people knowing who they are really clearly, what they do well, what they need to work on, what getting better looks like, and then finding the relationship that aligns to what they need versus aesthetically are connected to is critically important, because the relationships that don't work are the ones where you prioritize the connection because you're both Black women in Kim and I's eyes, versus are Kim and I the right two Black women to be connected based on what our mutual goals are. And every woman isn't going to be the right person for what you need, but you got to know yourself so you can make that. And then if it happens to you be a woman, great, but it might be a man, it might be, right, it could be somebody younger than you. It's about what are you trying to work on and who's best versus defaulting to I have to have a woman as a sponsor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to take one more question from our listeners, and it is, what can company leaders do to promote their employees' ability to create an impact within their professional role?
Say that question again, Claire.
It is, what can company leaders do to promote their employees' ability to create an impact within their professional role?
So I'm going to give a little bit of a devil's advocate response to that question, which is this. The company has to stop being at the center of how we define ourselves as professional. Think of a wheel. Often where we are working and how our career is happening becomes the hub of the wheel, right? Where we're working, Target. And then we make ourselves a spoke in that wheel, which means whatever happens to Target then happens to my whole doggone life. Mm-hmm. Part of what we need to do as women is anchor ourselves on our professional journey, our potential in this world. The things we need to do is an independent, standalone exercise, and perspective, that then where you do it is across a variety of things. We over-attach to our job and where we work. And so when that starts to fluctuate, so do we. You have to do the work to be anchored in who you are, what you want to go after, and spend as much time making the company be right for what you're trying to do as much as you're trying to be right for the company. Making sure that I tell people all the time, Target has to compete for me every morning. Every morning. Is this still where I want to go? Is this still servicing what I need? The day where the honest answer to that question is no, I'm done. Because Caroline has a mission and purpose tied to being here that Target gets to be a part of, not the other way around. So when we talk about what should companies be doing, my perspective is companies should continue to tell people to not be too attached to them, to have a mission and purpose that is tied to how you want to exist in the world. And then companies should be saying, we want to know more about what you're trying to do and how we can play a role in that. And if your company isn't saying that, you need to develop that for yourself. The company's boundaries are illusions. This is about you. This is about you as a woman and as a professional, and own your journey so that where you do it is constantly negotiable, because your path is not tied to who's writing your check. And if you know that and choose not to do that, then that's a choice. You're not a victim.
And I would say, just to add on to that, if there's any advice, I think that I would have given my younger self, that's the letter I would have written, exactly what Caroline said, because I did over-index in terms of the company driving my life. And I think it's just a part of the generation, how my parents grew up. I'm third generation college. And so I think all my parents were like, work for a company, you are the company. And that was what I was taught. But if now, just I'm, so excited on the new journey I've been with, and helping with, younger startups, and they just have a whole different outlook on things. And I think I definitely would tell my younger self exactly what Caroline said.
And we have to feel obligated, as Kim talks about that, right? Like that, there was generational validity to why her parents said that to her, and it was a part of the operation. Our role as that next generation is to not leave this where we got it. So if Kim handed off the baton to me, with that being what her parents shared with her in her existence, even if reflectively she would have liked to write herself a letter, I am not honoring Kim's legacy if I stay in a mindset that doesn't move forward what it means for a woman to be successful in corporate America. My obligation to Kim is to pick up the baton for my leg of the race and take it further so that the next woman can pick it up, so that my daughter is picking up a different baton than what I picked up from Kim. I'm obligated to take that further because she did her part in her generation. I got to stand on my 2 cents and be like, stop making the company too much of your job. Hopefully my daughter doesn't even have to work for a company, right? And that is part of our obligation as women, is to pick up the baton and take it to somewhere further based on who we get it from and who we want to hand it off to.
All right, thank you both. That is all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you, Kim and Caroline, for joining us. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to this action-oriented webinar on professional sponsorship. We hope that you'll stay connected to us and apply what you've learned today from Caroline and Kim to create a greater impact in your workplace and beyond.